could still get it done, and she's constantly in my office telling me to do that, and I honestly would not have had it done without Jenny, so I really thank you, Jenny. The couple other things just before I get started is when I kind of looked, and a couple years ago when I was put in this position, I've been pretty much nervous about this thing since it started, and I really appreciate being put in this position. I looked at the list of past presidents of this organization, and I felt like the old Sesame Street song, one of these things is not like the others. One of these things just doesn't belong. And I'm not sure which one it is, and I'm pretty sure it's me. I was put in mind of the old comparative advantage chapter in Hain before Dave and Pete ruined the book, where there was 3 characters in the chapter, Ann and Ben and Cal, and they could produce material goods and spiritual goods, and Ann could produce 8 and 4, and Ben could produce 3 and 3, and Cal could produce 1 and 2. And you look at Cal's PPF on the board and you go, I'm pretty sure I'm Cal. But the nice thing about being Cal is even Cal had a comparative advantage. So I hope I've pursued my comparative advantage. The whole time I was thinking about writing this, and we talk about, there's a great phrase that is credited to Newton but goes back before Newton about standing on the shoulders of giants. I kind of feel like I'm standing behind the giants, like pushing them into the room, telling a bunch of 18-year-olds, look, this stuff is so cool, look at this stuff. And so the whole time I was writing this, I was thinking about having grown up in the 70s and being a fan of classic rock, and real live classical rock, and Emerson, Lake and Palmer, and the Carnival #2 First Impression for you old timers, where it starts off, welcome back my friends to the show that never ends. We're so glad you could attend. Come inside, come inside. Come inside, the show's about to start, guaranteed to blow your head apart. Rest assured you'll get your money's worth, greatest show in heaven, hell or earth. You gotta see the show, it's a dynamo. You got to see the show, it's rock and roll. And that's what economics is. It's rock and roll, and I'm just fortunate enough to get to teach it, to take the ideas of the people that are on that list and the people that are in this room and try to portray them to 18-year-olds, to 22-year-old males who don't want to be sitting in a room at 8:30 in the morning and do that. So what I want to do today is talk a little bit about, as he said, qui docet discet, the process of teaching process. I've learned a lot teaching this stuff, and I want to kind of share some thoughts I've had about, not that why we should teach, but how we should teach. So let me start again on the shoulders of a giant or behind a giant, and my epilogue starts with, I don't know how to get this mic, and we're going to do that. Can you hear me if I do this?
Yes.
All right, I'm going to try. I'm not used to standing still either, so I'm a mess right now, so I'll do the best I can. Mises wrote near the end of Human Actions that economics must not be relegated to classrooms and statistical offices and must not be left to esoteric circles. It is the philosophy of human life and action and concerns everybody and everything. It is the pith of civilization and of man's human existence. Okay? Economics is a way of understanding the world, an important way of understanding the world. Economists do research, economists write and lecture to the public, and economists teach. Teaching economics is the most important thing that I can do as an economist. Good economics class has the same qualities as an episode of Mythbusters. It's my favorite show. One of my favorites, besides South Park, but we'll get to that. People not trained in economics tend to believe weird things like energy independence is a good idea, that trade means one person is taking advantage of another, or that profits are some sort of turpe lucrum or ill-gotten gains and therefore serve no useful function. Beliefs in these myths is dangerous because the policies they tend to support threaten our general prosperity and well-being. As teachers of economics, we can provide the fallacy prophylactic to demonstrate that ideas like energy independence and isolationism are impoverishing, that trade is mutually beneficial, and that profit plays a pivotal role in the smooth and peaceful functioning of a peaceful society.
A recent Quinnipiac University poll showed that 45% of those surveyed prefer to see spending by the state to stimulate job growth, while only 32% wanted to see the budget deficit reduced, and 17% wanted lower taxes. When nearly half the people polled still believe that government spending will create jobs after trillions of dollars of stimulus, we failed to do our jobs. The importance of Bastiat's broken window and our ability to convey its simple message is paramount. If we start by understanding that people really believe that robbing Peter to pay Paul makes both Peter and Paul more wealthy, or at the very least gives Paul a job at no cost to Dave, Mary, George, Irvin, etc., et al., I should say, for my Latin scholar in the crowd, we can craft our teaching to trace out the effects of how these proposed changes will affect their decisions and how similar policies have fared in our history and throughout the world. Start with the assumption that they understand that they're passing the buck because they don't think that the buck will be returned to them. And we can better teach them that the buck will come back around in the form of reduced wealth, not only for Peter, but also for them and everyone else in the end. Teaching tends to be viewed as the least glamorous, if not least important aspect of what economists do. That might be because it requires the most humility. All communication is aimed at securing cooperation of your audience in some way, shape, or form. We want our students' cooperation. That is, we want them to arrive at these conclusions as if they had gotten there on their own, as if they were their own ideas. The most effective and lasting communication occurs when someone arrives at these ideas that he ultimately sees as an inevitable conclusion. That is, the cost of not reaching these conclusions is too high. The key to effective communication is empathy properly understood. Empathy means not putting yourself in somebody else's shoes. Rather, it means seeing things from the perspective of another, becoming that person. Effective communication requires that you first seek to understand and then to be understood. It's similar to farming, a lot like farming. A farmer has to understand the makeup of the soil before he can grow anything. Just as not all seeds will grow in all kinds of soil, not all ideas will grow in all kinds of minds. We must first understand how our students think before we can know which seeds we can plant in hopes of them growing into fully formed ideas that will serve the students for a lifetime and make them better citizens and economists. So good communication is about jointly moving toward resolution. It's a trip we have to take together. Each time we teach, we should travel the road again as if it was the first time we've traveled it. See the sights again, point them out to your fellow travelers. Don't just tell them the landscape is beautiful, experience the beauty with them. Relive literally your first trip. Relive the joy that you get when you discovered the discovery process for the first time. I got goosebumps, I'm sorry. As important as our material is, it's also really the coolest thing in the world. And it allows us to make sense of the world in a way that nothing else can. Teaching economics does more than inoculate students from varied and sundry disease-ridden ideas. Economics properly taught creates a predisposition to being in awe of the social world around us. Economics can not only combat ignorance, but also inspire wonderment. How is it that Farmville gets beer without anyone having to direct each and every detail of the process to bring beer to the lips of college students on a Friday night? And by the way, for you guys that don't know, Farmville is not the one on Facebook. We actually, the biggest town there we are is actually called Farmville. And that's where we go to the Walmart on Friday nights to get our beer. It's the same process that keeps them from killing each other on the highways and from sitting on top of each other in class on the first day of the semester. The world is chock full of examples of spontaneous order and should inspire humility at the wonder of it all. When we find ourselves confronted with the more or less unwilling minds of undergraduates, we should have two basic goals. Our personal goals are our goals for ourselves and our goals for our audience. The personal goals we have are, what do we want to teach the students? What is it that we want them to learn? Our goals for the audience are more complex. Do we want them to change their moods, their minds, or their willingness to act? Are we trying to stimulate their emotions, change their opinions, or get them to act? Those are the three basic goals of persuasion, right? Mood, mind, or action. When we teach economics, we need to understand what exactly our goal is. What do we want them to learn, and what do we want them to be, do we want them to be emotional, thoughtful, or active? I think we can agree that what we want is to get students to change their minds about, now really to open their minds to, the economic way of thinking. My goal when I teach any course is to teach it like it's the last course, the economics course they're ever going to take. That's true whether it's the first one they take or the 10th one or 11th one they take. I figure that I'm never going to get another chance. Okay? Consider the course like you would a first date. What things do you want her to know about you so she'll go on another date with you? You don't regale her with the minutiae and technical detail. You acquaint her with the most important aspects of your personality. She doesn't need to know about your bordered Hessian, or that your marginal cost curve crosses your average cost curve at its minimum. She doesn't care about your efficiency. What she's interested in is gains from trade. She wants to know that you can be ordered spontaneously, not that you have network externalities. The goal is to leave her wanting to have another date, not believe she has seen all that you have to offer. A second date depends on her learning enough to be intrigued, not so much that she's overwhelmed. TMI. Empathy suggests that we teach the things that will make them citizen economists for life. Most of our students are not going to be going on to graduate degrees in economics, and to teach them as such is like planting peaches in Maine or potatoes in Georgia, or telling your blind date that you never really liked your family. You're going to lose them both forever. So teach them like you want another date with her, not like you're preparing her for some future upgrade. Teach for the student who is the non-economics major who sees you later and says, "Damn you, I can't stop thinking on the margin." How exactly do you have a killer first date? What is the important stuff? How do you teach economics without the formulas and functions of graduate school? It begins with an understanding that those formulas and functions show the outcome of a market process, not the process itself. It is the market process that citizen economists most need to understand. Luckily, the market process is still best understood in words rather than mathematical equations. There are three important lessons I believe that undergraduates need to learn for them to appreciate the market process. One is supply is demand reckoned backwards. Markets tend to clear, they are not in equilibrium, and it's about gains from trade, not efficiency. Equilibrium, supplies, marginal cost, and efficiency are static concepts that have little meaning to students who live in a dynamic world. Understanding the world through a dynamic market process also allows us to give them a more thorough going of the subjectivism we want them to understand later. Demand curves are intuitively grasped by students. It's easy to understand that when the cost of something rises, individuals want less of it, and vice versa. They have little problem understanding diminishing marginal utility from a Mengerian perspective. I trump Dick, I guess, next year. This is easily built on the foundation of rational choice as applying means to ends according to ideas, that is, according to action. They know what it's like to have limited resources, their means, available for unlimited and varied ends. It's straightforward for them to understand that those means can be applied to a variety of ends. They can buy pizza or beer, or the new video game, or rent a movie, or buy gas. So they rank all ends on the same scale because they do it every day. They have limited budgets and have to prioritize their decisions. It's easy then to develop the idea that the value of their means derives from the value of their ends. That things are not valuable per se, but because they serve a purpose, that is, they satisfy an end. And since they apply means to ends in rank order, they understand that the means diminish in value as they have more of them. They also understand that the more of any one thing that you have, the less you will value it on the margin. They're more likely to give a friend their favorite beverage if they got 24 of them than if they got 2. With an understanding of opportunity costs, it's not a big jump to understand reservation demand, and therefore supply curves is relating to the choice not to make something available. Offer to buy a student's watch or backpack from him, make sure you got money in your hand while you're doing it, okay, at higher and higher prices, while reminding him that each time he refuses, he is demanding the good at the price he has rejected. And watch what happens when you reach the price. They grasp that the difference between being a demander and a supplier is just whether or not the reservation price has been met. If we teach supply curves as upward sloping marginal cost curves, we must conclude that prices are the product of subjective evaluation on the part of the demander and upon the objective cost of production faced by the producer. The idea that there is an objective, more or less, cost of production is the root of the idea that prices can be jacked up and therefore consumers are being robbed by sellers. How can we not expect the average person to believe that when a freeze in Florida last night immediately leads to an increase in the orange prices today, it is nothing more than profiteering when oranges have an objective cost? When we understand that supply curves are governed by the same diminishing marginal values as demand curves, it becomes clear that the dead oranges today will make it more expensive for our grocer to replace his oranges tomorrow, because oranges become relatively more scarce. Students understand that when things become relatively more scarce, that sharing is a nice thing to do. That lesson's been taught to them their whole lives. What we need is a kindergarten teacher telling us to share, the same as she would if we were in the sandbox playing with the Tonka trucks and we managed to break one. Rising prices are the kindergarten teacher reminding us to let everybody have a turn. Whether it's oranges or Tonka trucks, when something becomes relatively more scarce, the cost of making it available increases. The increased cost sends a signal to share. If rising prices are merely profiteering, then citizens will clamor for rules that prevent them from performing their role as kindergarten teacher, and we'll end up with some kid sitting in the corner of the sandbox dejected because he has no Tonka truck and is in the initial stages of scurvy because he's got no oranges. It's a bad day in the sandbox. Understanding that there are no objective costs of production is the remedy for price controls. If we teach demand as the plans of non-owners of a good to obtain that good at different prices, then it follows that supply represents the plans of owners to retain a good at different prices. Supply and demand are the same thing, just measured in different directions. So the law of diminishing marginal utility is the same as the law of increasing opportunity cost. So decisions to supply and demand are really the same decisions, and therefore prices are determined by demand. This makes it easier to understand that the value of a resource in any use is really the value in alternative uses, or its value by other decision makers. The Miami Heat did not want to pay LeBron James $110 million, right? They wanted to pay him $110, right? The problem is even Cleveland could afford $111, right?
Hey, big Cleveland.
By the way, the Heat are the greatest team in the history of basketball, right? Pete, what are they, 12-0 by now? Anyway, that was for basketball for Pete. When students understand that value is determined by those that want the good for application to a different end, it's easy to understand the nature of economic profit and its importance in the allocating resources to their most highly valued uses. When citizens don't understand the role of profits, they fall easy prey to ideas like windfall profits are evil, or profit is just good fortune or luck, or profit is nothing more than stealing consumers' money. Profit, we all know, is merely the ex post reward for correctly anticipating ex ante that benefits would exceed costs. It's not hard for the students to understand that all of the decisions they make are aimed at earning a profit. That profit and loss are fundamental to choice. It's important to understand that this quest for profit that entices us to look for a better deal on a new computer also entices Walmart to make that computer available to us. If profit is the same as pirate booty and the result is zero-sum game, we must prevent the strong from preying on the weak through profit prevention laws, or at least mitigate the theft by returning some of the booty through redistribution. The flip side of not understanding profits is the misunderstanding of losses. If profits are undeserved, so are losses, and should therefore be prevented whenever possible and mitigated when not so. So loss becomes an ipso facto market failure, which must be corrected for and prevented. This socialization of risk means not only that resources won't be allocated to their highest valued use, but also that the allocation towards low valued uses will be encouraged. That is, we institutionalize a permanent reduction in wealth. The outcome of such beliefs being made policy is that recessions last a lot longer than they need to, and misery and poverty are increased. Gains from trade is a process notion. Efficiency is a static notion. Market clearing is the result of traders attempting to exhaust gains from trade by making exchanges. The notion of efficiency carries with it the baggage of being a physical concept. Farmville gets beer not because it's efficient, but because there are gains from trade to doing so. A market is a process of bids and offers because the participants are attempting to exhaust gains from trade. Each is trying to get the most he can from his limited resources. That is why suppliers engage demanders and demanders seek out suppliers. This process ensures, as we know, that resources flow to their highest valued uses. If a supplier can find a demander whose plans include a higher value use, the supplier has a new trading partner. When a demander encounters a supplier who plans to include a higher valued use, the demander looks for a new trading partner. The notion of efficiency just means that marginal benefits equal marginal cost, and the implication that this property carries with it some special moral authority. Focusing on efficiency is a sterile exercise. When the focus is on efficiency, it's easy for a shaman to sell the lack of efficiency as a fixable failure. All that needs to be done is that benefits and costs be manipulated to make them equal at the margin, regardless of whom the particular participants are. Gains from trade, however, are peculiar to the individuals. Efficiency is a result, while gains from trade are a pursuit that actually attracts buyers to sellers and sellers to buyers. The most important aspect of social interaction is the cooperation, not equilibrium. Equilibrium is the result of supply equaling demand at a given price. Equilibrium carries with it the physical notion of lack of change. If something's not in equilibrium, it can be placed there by the appropriate engineer. It does not require the participants to take an active role. Since supply and demand both represent plans, the notion of market clearing is one where plans must be coordinated. When markets are not clearing, either buyers or sellers are going to find their plans frustrated. Students understand that when their plans are frustrated, they must do something to change their plans. The process of changing plans brings about market clearing. This means that the actions of the participants are integral to the markets and therefore social coordination. Through an understanding of gains from trade, citizen economists can withstand the siren calls of central planning to correct market failures. When my washing machine is out of equilibrium and it bounces around in the mosh pit of my laundry room, if I don't put it back in equilibrium, it won't get there and may bounce itself right into the kitchen and look for a dance with the dishwasher. If a price is supposed to be in equilibrium and it's not, then the equilibrium needs to be restored. It's kind of like having your drunk friend teetering around in the bar and you're standing him upright so he doesn't wander into the street. Right? Prices don't have equilibria absent the actors in the market. In fact, prices don't even exist absent a trade, and a trade is just the manifestation of the consummation of plans of the buyer and the plans of the sellers meeting in the market. We have felt the resentment of somebody frustrating our plans by sticking his nose in our business. Students feel that every day if they're on most college campuses. That's what market intervention is, somebody supplanting his plans for yours. When the citizen economist understands that the disagreement with the substitutes plan is met with the use of force, he will want less substitution and therefore less violence. And all society will be more peaceful. As plans have come together, we stand to benefit from their coordination, and we understand how hard it is to coordinate our own plans, let alone expecting some faraway bureaucrat to have any idea about our plans and how they are coordinated with the plans of those we are trading with. The substitutions of the plans of the many for the plans of the plans of the few is not the same as opening a lid on a washing machine and moving some clothes around. Markets don't equilibrate, they're not machines, and metaphors to such are misleading. Markets clear because individuals have incentives to make their plans coordinate with others, not because a mechanic has made the right adjustment on a tensioning screw. We don't have to teach individuals to act in their own self-interest or teach them how to weigh expected marginal benefits and expected marginal costs. They get that on their own without any help from us, although pointing it out to them can be useful. We do have to teach them, however, how it is that the order in the world is the outcome of the individuals pursuing their own self-interest. Most of them don't think or realize that there is, in fact, coordination and cooperation all around them. We have to convince them that the order does exist and they're just not seeing it. It is important for them to understand how their decisions and the decisions of others interact to play an integral role in the spontaneous order that's all around them. Not only is the order the outcome of theirs and others' choices, I lost where I was. I'm sorry. My pages are out of order. I'm missing page 31. It's terrible. Jenny, you could but that also the order in the world is an unintended consequence. Economics is about individuals and the choices they make, not about equilibrium conditions that result in the rarefied world as some system of equations. When we discover the conclusion that social phenomena are the results of individuals and their choices, and that we can make the world intelligible in those terms, the world becomes a more fascinating place, and the importance and primacy of the individual and ability to make his own choices is empowering. Mises was right when he wrote, "The body of economic knowledge is an essential element in the structure of human civilization. It is a foundation upon which modern industrialism and the moral, intellectual, technological, and therapeutical achievements of the last centuries have been built. It rests with the men whether they will make the proper use of the rich treasure with which this knowledge provides them, or whether they will leave it unused. But if they fail to take the best advantage of it and disregard its teaching and warnings, they will not annul economics. They will stamp out our society and the human race. Our role as educators is important to our long-term survival. While talking to each other is productive with respect to our career advancement, unless we talk with the eventual citizen economist, our careers will be the least of our worries." Hobbes was only partially correct. If we allow the myths to perpetuate those that perpetuate the myths, usually at their own gain, to organize society, life will certainly be nasty, poor, brutish, and short. Thank you very much.